Well, it took 3 calls, 3 different representatives. Well, each one of them was different. One of them, the one that actually got it resolved, they just did it. Well, the process should have been the same for each one of them. And I'm sure they have processes written, but it's also the followed, right? Because as I said, we create, document, optimize, and implement. The implementation, do you really follow the process, or you didn't follow the process? Or were you like a machine, like robotic about following the process? Or do you really understand the process and you know what you need to do, but also...
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedlick, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Adi. Adi, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so excited about our conversation.
All right, so give everybody the highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Yeah, so my name is Adi. I'm a process consultant, and I have a company where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive.
What? And the clouds parted, the angels sang, and when somebody does this for me, this is awesome. So what made you decide, let's back up the bus a bit first, what made you decide to do this as your profession?
That's a good question. So I actually been doing it now for almost 30 years. I am an industrial engineer. And when I had to decide what I'm going to major in, I looked at a definition of an industrial engineer, and it's basically a combination of understanding people and science, and basically making things more organized, bringing order to companies. And that's really what my passion is. I love communicating with people. I love understanding people. I love helping people, but I also like bringing order, bringing that stability and order and consistency into businesses. So that's how I got started. And I stayed in the same career path throughout my entire career. And then I was working as a general business consultant. Well, actually, the story is a little bit more, has a little bit more to it. So I was working for another consulting company, an international consulting company, where we were helping businesses scale and grow. And I decided to open my own company. So when we opened the company, myself and a business partner, we were basically generalists in terms of helping businesses in all areas. But then one of the things I will tell my clients is you need processes. You need processes. Where are your processes? Let's document your processes. Document your processes. Well, week after week, nothing happened. And then I basically asked one of my clients, well, what about if we do it for you? If I find the resources and we go and do it for you? And he goes, yes. And then another client, yes, 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 yes. And I go, oh, that's a niche right here. It's needed. So that's really, this line started about 12 years ago, almost going into 13. And where I decided we are going to concentrate on process documentation. And today, we are a big team. We have consultants, technical writers, and we helped hundreds and hundreds of businesses basically become consistent, efficient, and increase their profitability by having their processes documented.
Nice. I love it. And for those of you who might be listening who don't realize that there is a point where you get to in a business where you have to. If you've ever read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, if you've been in business long enough that you start hiring people, even if you don't hire people, I think everybody gets to the point where they have to start implementing. And I think there's a point at big business where we have implementation and this is the way we do it. Why? Because it's always been done that way. It's like, oh, right. No, that is so not a good reason. Or the worst that I come across is, how do you do that? Manually.
Right.
Are there any kind of, let's call them pet peeves that you have in the industry of how people are doing things? They think they're doing them right. They hope they're doing them right. They know that they're not doing them right. What are those?
Right. I mean, we all like the why you're doing it, because this is the way it's always been done, right? I mean, that's one of them. That's what we look for, because that is you're doing it, but is it really the best way to do it? Is it really the most efficient way to do it? And that's what we have to look for.
Nice. So when you're working with people now, what does that process look like? How do you start with them? Do they need to know kind of how bad the issues are? Or why do they usually come to you at what point?
Yes, I'm going to answer, first of all, start with the last question. So they usually come to us because either they work with another trusted advisor that recommended that they need processes, or they come to us because they know that that's what they need in order to grow and scale. It might be that they are experiencing growth and they know that they need to hire for more. Let's say, for instance, they need to hire 3 salespeople, but how do they communicate that sales process to them, right? So that is a point of, we need to transfer that knowledge and document it so you actually have a sales playbook. Or, we are hiring for a new position, we need to create processes for that position. So there are different pain points, there are different, but the common denominator is that our clients are fast-growing companies that are lacking consistency. That's the common denominator.
Yeah, you mentioned the lacking consistency, and I really want people to understand what the symptoms of that are, because they may not understand that that is the problem that they're having. But things like, okay, here's your job, and then it doesn't get done the way they want to, and all of a sudden they have this revolving door in this position where they can't keep anybody, nobody's doing what they thought they were going to do, things like that. What are some of the other symptoms that they might be experiencing?
Well, you're not getting uniform results. You have 3 people handling, 3 customer service, let's say, representatives, and you get different. So you tend to now get all the problems to one. Let's say you have Sally, Joe, and Bill. Well, you tend to give it to Sally because she knows how to handle those things. Well, Joe and Bill, if they're actually occupying the seat of a customer service representative, they should be able to handle it uniformly. Everybody should be actually doing the same. I actually had that experience. I had to call a credit card company just to, I used my points in order to book a flight. I needed to change something. Well, it took 3 calls, 3 different representatives. Well, each one of them was different. One of them, the one that actually got it resolved, they just did it. Well, the process should have been the same for each one of them. And I'm sure they have processes written, but it's also the followed, right? Because as I said, we create, document, optimize, and implement. The implementation, do you really follow the process, or you didn't follow the process? Or were you like a machine, like robotic about following the process? Or do you really understand the process and you know what you need to do, but also how do you do it correctly? Because we also get into that in terms of documenting best practices and how to troubleshoot things.
Well, and it brings us so many levels of this, but we used to laugh is when my son was little, I said, I don't want to have to enforce something, or I don't want to have to implement something that I'm not going to enforce. So it becomes the punishment has to fit the crime, but I also have to be the one that sits there and goes, okay, are we going to make them go to bed early? Because that means I have to stay home and watch them go to bed early. And when we look at business in that way, there are a ton of different reasons why people they may have systems, and then to your point, they don't go through that implementation process, and then they don't follow through with making sure that the individual is doing it or giving them the resources they need. So talk to me about that kind of arena. And I always ask 27 questions. Feel free to answer whichever one you want.
Yes, processes have to be followed by all. You have to do that. And I tell my clients, what's the point of documenting your processes if you're not going to get them implemented? So I love what you said. If you're not going to enforce it, then don't put it there. If you're not going to actually demand from your staff to actually implement their processes and procedures, what's the point of having them? Just don't do them. It's a waste of your time. Document them if you really intend to get them used. That would be my advice.
Nice. And I'm assuming when they're working with you, part of that kind of the engineering background of this is to go, okay, so now is this implementable? Is this,
Right.
Does it actually work? examples of this when people move into their house and they start putting things in cupboards because that cupboard looks like it should have this stuff in it. But then when you go and try and find stuff, it's just like, well, seemed like a good idea at the time, but how does that translate into the business world?
Well, has to be organized. So you asked me a question, how do we approach process documentation? So the first thing that we do is we actually create a map of all the processes. You have to map the processes and you have to see it from beginning to end to make sure that you actually have all of them mapped. Then what we do is we identify the procedures that have to be written and we write them. We start documenting and start extracting the knowledge and writing them. Then so that will be existing state. We figure out what should be the future state of what improvements can be done if they need to be done. We're not obsessive about change. We're not obsessive about creating improvements if it's not needed, just when it's needed. And we'll, if the client wants to, then we'll give the advice on that. And so we optimize. And then we actually implement. We actually have a very specific 8-step process on how to make sure that the processes are being followed by all.
Oh, nice. So, and does it matter if somebody has like high amount of middle management, if they're lean on middle management, and does that affect how this all rolls out?
Well, we work with the management team for sure, and we like inclusivity, meaning like we want to work with your team. We don't just want one person participating because then there is no buy-in. So we definitely need a buy-in from the entire team, and we will utilize the entire team in order to make it happen.
So have you noticed a difference between kind of how people take things on if they have let's call it a leaner structure? So they have the CEO and then they have a bunch of people doing the thing versus I have the CEO that then has management that then has their team. Because I'm assuming that if somebody has a leaner team, they're going to notice, one, that having procedures in place allows them to get a certain level of consistency and work being done consistent. Therefore, that starts to improve their processes, which then allows them to then make different business decisions, no?
Yeah, but I think it really depends on the organization and where they're at. And once you have, if you're more efficient and you're consistent, then each person can actually wear their hats as opposed to having to have a manager that has to supervise something that actually should be in place because there is no process.
It totally makes sense. Awesome. So when it comes to we went over kind of the stumbling blocks that somebody might be having and when they're not implementing it. Have you noticed if there's any symptoms or kind of stumbling blocks that somebody might have when their systems are just out of the procedures, aren't in touch with what's currently going on in the business?
Well, yeah, I mean, when that happens, then nobody uses it, and then they just start, verbally asking questions or inventing their own or doing their own processes, and that just creates more chaos.
So the chaos starts creeping back in again. You know that it's time to go and retouch those things. That is awesome. Okay, so in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I am super excited to hear about a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Absolutely. The Cinderella story, and I mean, the thing that they really wanted, like, first of all, let's start, why did they even want to do that, right? I mean, before and after. So before, they went to business with that dream of having freedom. As a business owner, we have freedom, right? So they wanted freedom. They wanted the ability to be in control of their own destiny. They wanted to have the ability to create and to create basically the business that they want, use the technology that they want, just like this amazing picture that they had. That's why they started their own business, right? They were in construction. But in reality, what happened is that they're basically very high paid employees, sometimes not very high paid, but they were basically an employee of their business, right? And they were working long hours. They had to deal with a lot of, regulations, with learning different things, with the burden of the responsibility of actually being able to support many families. It's not just their own, but they had that burden of like, okay, now I'm responsible for 60 other families, or 60 other individuals. Some of them had families, but it's just that responsibility was weighing on them. And they worked, the 60, 80-hour week, probably 80, it's like working that 11 hours every day, 7 days a week or whatnot, and then start having family. And it was just it was going farther and farther away from the dream. So when we got introduced, it was basically pretty chaotic. And the thing is, again, we talked about the word consistency. They didn't have that consistency. They will hire an estimator, but they weren't able to train that person. Just observe, see, whatever your experience is. But then it created that friction because what the estimator was producing was not exactly what they wanted. So the trust issue came in because, well, how can I give them the leads? Because I don't really trust them, right? I mean, that was an example of that. In terms of operations, if you do not deliver high quality, what happens? For you as a salesperson, you will stop selling. Even though you are going through the motions of meeting with leads and whatnot, that you can deliver. The conversation with the last upset customer is still in your head. So you're not going to sell. And then the leads will plummet, will go down, the sales will go down, etc. I mean, there is all this vicious circle that takes place. So what measurements do you put in place in order to actually have high quality control, in order for you to actually have satisfied customers? Have the certainty that when you are selling, you're actually going to get the same quality product every single time. So those are some of the, the things that they were facing, right? And for the business owners that are listening to us right now, there are different phases. That doesn't happen necessarily when you just grow, when you just start. And we usually do not work with people that just start. Why? Because at that point, they need mainly marketing. They need maybe to hire their first employee. Yes, do they need systems? Absolutely. Can they afford it, or can they have the time to do it? Not right now. First of all, get yourself a business, like, sell, do whatever you can, produce, get the business up and running, and then concentrate on systems, right? And you and I talked before the recording, and you mentioned that usually people, what you've seen is businesses are concerned with documenting systems before they sell. And that's very important. And we work with people that want to sell in order to document their businesses so they can actually, be able to sell and get a higher value. Like one of our clients basically got twice the value of what he was asking because he had documented systems. And I'm going to get back to the Cinderella story, because the Cinderella story is about the business in between, the one that is growing and scaling.
Absolutely.
And when you grow,
when you mention the selling, it's not so much the selling within the company; it's selling the actual company itself. Just to articulate that to the audience is
it's the exit strategy. You're right; it's the exiting. Absolutely.
Usually.
So in between, when you are growing, you should be thinking about your exit, about selling the company. You should be, why not have those processes and procedures in place so you can actually grow consistently? It's kind of like, Michelle, is like, like when you sell your house. So maybe you're living in a house that hasn't been updated and, there are things to fix, but you go, okay, one day, and then you decide to sell, and the realtor does a walkthrough and you say, okay, well, you need to fix the roof. We need to now remodel the kitchen and remodel the bathroom, and let's paint that horrible paint on the wall. Let's paint it something else so it's more attractive. And guess what? then you do it and you're like, why did I not do it the entire time, right? Why did I live like this? Same thing. It's like you are growing, you are scaling. First of all, it's a necessity. So you can actually have your life back. And that's back to the story. So that client, basically, this is what they were experiencing. We came in and we documented the processes and procedures. In the process of doing that, we also implemented it. So the employees that were in different seats in the company really saw what they needed to do. There were those that were not in the right seat. So we were able to see it because they weren't able to implement. People got on the same page. You know, the owner of the company, our client, was basically able to work on the business, not in the business. He was able to hire a general manager who was actually in charge of the day-to-day operations. He was able to hire estimators, assistants, etc. But each one of them knew what they were supposed to do. He lost the fear of, well, what if that person doesn't work out? I already invested 3 weeks in training them. What's going to happen then? Well, he lost that fear because now there was a training methodology. You know, you can actually, he told me that he was able to decrease the time of training somebody by 75% because it was there and they can study, they can learn it, and they can apply it. And the Cinderella, the Prince Charming, was basically finding, you know, the work week of 30, 40 hours, plenty of time to spend time with the family. And then the time decreased actually, and that person was able to actually, our client was able to start another business. So that just shows that if you have organization, you don't necessarily need to have the chaos that people experience on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And I love these stories because to me, it's paramount. I mean, you mentioned the startups, you know, use the user manual as your, processes first, because you don't necessarily know what works in 3 months from now. Could be completely different. It's when you start to.
It's a great point. I just want to stop you there because that's a great point, because people bring up that point to me. They go, okay, well, what if my processes are changing? Or what if I now have a new process? What do I do? Do I document? Should I wait until the process is done? Well, my answer to that is yes, you got to document. Okay. When I say we specifically don't work with startups, it doesn't mean that they don't need processes. Okay. We are there because, you know, it is an investment and we are experts at what we do. And we are, you know, we are helping companies that basically are out of they don't have the expertise or the time to do that. And it's a done it for you service, and we document everything. But let's say you are starting, you absolutely should jot down. You don't have to do anything very complicated, but you do need to write your process, especially if you are changing it, because then if you are changing something, if it's not written down, you won't know what you actually changed. And then what can happen is that you can change things that are actually working. But if you actually write the steps of, let's say, this is how I sell, this is how I do an estimate, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. So now we said, okay, well, you know what? Step number 3 has to be changed. Good. Well, keep metrics. Figure out what was working before, compare it to the new change. Did the change work? Yes, no. And then decide if implementing it or not. But if you start creating random changes, then you never know if it's workable or not, and you don't have anything to compare it to, and that creates a problem.
Absolutely. Change for the sake of change is not always good. You want to know what was working and how it was working. The only way you can do that, to your point, is by doing that. I love that. I also like when companies start to realize that by systemizing their onboarding across divisions, that they're giving kind of the background of the company, the culture of the company to everybody that starts on. Because when they were small, they had that conversation with everybody that joined. And as they get bigger, they find that they're not having time to have that conversation, but you can always record that conversation and let them watch the video. It's not as personal, but it's better than not having it at all. What are some other things that you've noticed that people kind of start to let go of when it just becomes too big, or what should they be doing because it's big?
It's a very good point. I mean, I have it for my own company and I do it for other companies. It's like that onboarding, like first day onboarding checklist is very, very important. And I have videos, you know, I basically kind cut it into different steps. So they would watch the steps, introduction, what is the company about, the core values, the mission, the vision, the org chart, all of it, very, very important. So yeah, onboarding is definitely an important, it's a key one. The other thing is really the documentation of the actual processes and procedures for the job that people are going to be doing. Because when the company was smaller, yeah, you could ride along with a person and teach them. You could have the person follow you and shadow you. And again, written procedures are not a substitute to actually talking to people and guiding them and working with them. That's not a substitute. But it is a way for them to actually go back, for the employees to go back to what is written. Because maybe think about yourself, if you ever, I know we're talking to entrepreneurs, but if you ever work for somebody else or you experience that, a big project, the first day is like all confusing and you can't remember what was said. If you have it documented, they can go back, because your employees feel the same, they can go back and read it and they can figure out what is it that you just told them to do. You are setting them for success, right? So to answer your question, is the onboarding, but it's also the actual processes and procedures for what people are doing. Another thing is, in order for you not to repeat yourself over and over, if you see something happen, then ask yourself, is there a process for it? Is there a documented procedure? If there isn't, then you need to document it, or at least record a video on how it's being done, because that is the only way that you're going to get yourself out of that. People are coming into my office and asking all those questions. Well, if you do that, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen less and less. But it's also a matter of discipline of when somebody asks you that, and you know that there is a documented process, that you actually refer them to the written procedure, so they will actually look at it, and that will be the solution, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to answer because it's a short answer and it doesn't take a long time to answer. We want to make sure that you, as the leader, has the discipline. And you asked me about the management team. They also have to have the discipline to do that with their direct reports, is that let's refer to those processes. Let's refer to the processes when we are managing the company. If there is an issue, instead of reinventing the wheel every single time, is there a process that is actually addressing it that we can use in order for us to handle whatever is happening?
I could talk about this all day and the importance of it. It is not my wheelhouse to do those procedures. So I absolutely love and adore that it is within somebody's wheelhouse. So I know our listeners are going to want more from you. How did they start that journey with you?
So in terms of contacting us, they can contact us. They can contact me on LinkedIn. So it's Adi Klevit, Adiklevit, and schedule a time to talk to me. I do a 30-minute free process mapping. Would love to talk about your processes. What are your processes? What's working? What's not working? Any questions that you have? I also have a podcast where, Michelle, you were one of the guests. It was a great episode. It's called the System Simplified Podcast. You can listen to that and gain a lot of information. I'm on LinkedIn, as I said, of course, our website, and I'm sure you will include it in the show notes. So there's plenty of ways. Oh, you can also either call or text at 503-662-2911. So plenty of ways to do that.
Awesome. We will, of course, have all of Adi's links in the show notes. So go ahead and click on those links, open them up in a new browser, because we're not done yet. Because I get to ask you, at what point in life did you know that you were special, kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
I always had that. I actually started my own little business when I was in high school. I had a tutoring business that I started. And I love that, because I felt, just like in my story of my client, I felt that I'm the boss. I love being the boss. And I felt that I can then make my own money and I don't have to ask for permission to use my money for what, it's kind of like I can just for whatever I wanted. And I love always feeling productive and doing something. So that was for me really the start. I'm like, wow, this is fun. This is great. It is a way I have certain talents that I can exchange for then people paying me for it. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And although I worked for others in companies, and I still always had some side businesses because I always enjoy that. And then I decided when a certain point in my life, I said, okay, well, it's either I'm going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I want to be in control of my own destiny. I want to have that freedom. And I do. I mean, I know that is what us as entrepreneurs, we really adore and like, and we really cherish, right? Is that sense of freedom, wanting to be in charge of our own destiny, ability to create and to make things into reality, right? I mean, I love working on my business. I love figuring out the different aspects of it and how to solve problems. I love the fact that, I'm in charge of my own schedule. Yeah, are there demands? Of course. I mean, do I work long hours? Yes, but I personally enjoy it. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. For me, it's not work. It's really a game that I love to play, and it's very enjoyable.
I love it. You've been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
It's never too late to start documenting. Don't put it off. Do it. It's never going to be perfect. So don't get, it's paralysis by analysis. It's just don't do that. Just start documenting somehow, some way. If you need help, call us. But every business should have their processes documented.
Absolutely. And peeps, little hint, the sooner you start documenting your processes, the sooner you start escalating your wealth.
Absolutely.
It's worth it. Adi, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I know how valuable it is.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedlak. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.